Very good. Sheriff, call the jurors, please. Go ahead, Sheriff.
All rise.
Thank you, Sheriff. You all may be seated. Mr. Lewis, what says the state?
At this time, Your Honor, for the general jury statements.
Ms. Madsen, I'll call you in just a second. Members of the jury, it's customary in our law and our procedure to take a very brief recess at this time to take care of some procedural matters, so please go with the sheriff and await further instructions. All rise for the jurors. Sheriff, keep them in the hallway. Sheriff. Y'all may be seated. Ms. Madsen, the state has rested their case in chief. What says the defense?
At this time, Your Honor, the defense moves for a directed verdict stating that the state has failed to present a prima facie case of all of the elements alleged in their indictment.
Your motion for an instructed verdict is respectfully denied. Are you ready to proceed with your case?
Yes, Your Honor.
Very good. Go ahead, Sheriff.
All rise.
Thank you, Sheriff. Y'all may be seated. Members of the jury, thank you for indulging the court. The law is very much a procedure, and we're going to make sure that we follow each and every procedure along the way. And with that, is the defense ready for their case?
Yes, Your Honor.
Very good. Please call your first witness.
At this time, the defense calls Dale Richardson, a detective with the Dallas Police Department.
Morning, sir. If you would, please come to the front of the courtroom. And before you have a seat, raise your right hand. Swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth.
I do.
Please have a seat.
Thank you.
Be responding to questions from Ms. Madsen and perhaps also Mr. Lewis or Ms. Nicholson, who's directly in front of you. You may proceed whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Richardson, will you introduce yourself to the jury, please?
My name is Dale Richardson.
And how are you employed?
I am currently employed by the Dallas Police Department.
Will you walk this jury a little through your career as a police officer?
I started in May of 1990, right out of college. Went to the academy for about 6 months and then was assigned to Southwest Patrol in Oak Cliff for 7 years. I then worked undercover as a detective in narcotics for about 8.5 years. Left there, went to Northwest Patrol in evenings and was a field training officer for about 3 years. Then became a detective again, went to crimes against persons, working robberies, kidnappings, transferred over to homicide, and then to Special Investigations Unit. And then in October of 2018, I transferred out to the Firearms Training Center as a firearms instructor.
And when back in January 18th of 2017, what division were you assigned to?
The Special Investigations Unit.
What is the Special Investigations Unit?
Mostly handle officer-involved shootings, assaults against officers, death in custodies, people who die in police custody. Also, sometimes other high-profile stuff, murder for hires, things like that.
How many detectives were on that team?
When I went over, there were 5 detectives. At various times, we had between 3 and 6 detectives.
And so the jury understands whenever a homicide or a death investigation comes about, there's a lead detective, correct?
That is correct.
And the other detectives are all expected to assist.
Yes.
And fair to say that you were the lead and you disseminate orders of who needs to do what, and then they report back to you so that you can gather as much information and conduct a thorough investigation as quickly as possible.
That would be a good way to describe it.
Object to leading, Your Honor.
All right. I'm going to overrule the objection, but be careful not to lead.
Yes, Your Honor. So is that what happened in this case?
I was the lead detective in this case with the assistance of other detectives.
So on January 18th of 2017, did you respond to the scene that night?
I did, yes.
And what did you do when you got there?
Initially get there, Detective Ibarra and some of my supervisors were already at the scene, so they briefed me on what information they had gathered. Briefly reviewed some of the officers' body cameras just to get an idea for placement of where people and where everything occurred. walked through the crime scene to evaluate what I needed for evidence and stuff, what I had on the scene, spoke with the crime scene personnel to make sure certain things were covered, being collected or being measured, and then conducted a walkthrough with some of the witness officers.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Detective Richardson, you said that you had occasion to briefly look at the body cams. Fair to say that you had a snapshot of what took place?
A snapshot would be an accurate description.
Defense Exhibit 11, do you recognize this?
Yes, it's a diagram that was done by crime scene personnel.
This is already put into evidence. May this witness step down?
Yes, ma'am.
Detective Richardson, if you'll step down. On Defense Exhibit 4, is this the crime scene as it was as you arrived?
Yes.
It's a little bit getting light at that time of the day, correct?
At the time that picture's taken, yes.
It had previously been a little bit darker.
Yes, when I first got there it was.
If you'll look at that diagram right there. Okay, you gotta show the jury, so try not to keep your back to them.
Yes.
You see the post-it that says car?
I do see it.
Based on the body worn camera that you observed, is that where the stolen vehicle was originally parked?
The stolen vehicle, yes.
Did you confirm that that vehicle was stolen?
Yes.
The fence in front of it, is that what we see right here? Or is it, that's to the side?
That would be to the driver's side,
Okay, show on the diagram where.
along here.
What was along there?
It's the lattice fence, there's some trees and shrubs there.
And then the fence in front of it, did it look similar to that?
The fence in front of where the stolen vehicle had been parked?
Yes.
Yes.
Did you see that car try to ram through that fence?
On the body camera, yes.
To be honest with you, that fence looks pretty rickety, doesn't it?
It does.
And it seems surprising that the car couldn't get through that such a rickety fence, doesn't it?
Object to leaving, Your Honor.
Sustained.
I'll rephrase. Did you explore why they were not able to run down that fence?
Yes.
Showing you State's Exhibit 23. What was behind that fence?
There are trees and a cyclone fence on the other side.
So while it looks like they could run through it, what you can't see on the other side means that it's surprisingly more sturdy than it appears.
There's more support behind it than what it looks like.
You stated that you can have a seat, sir. You stated that you watched the body-worn cameras. Whose cameras did you watch?
Out there at the scene,
Yes, sir.
I watched the defendant's camera, I believe Kempel's camera, there may have been one or two others, but I don't remember specifically which ones they were.
Did you later go back and watch all of the cameras?
I did watch all of the body-worn cameras from the officers that were there at the time.
And did you move through them and make notes of specific things?
I did make notes of different things.
Detective Richardson, I'm going to start playing the body cameras. We'll play both Officer Hess's and Officer Kempel's. Do you have a preference on which one we do first?
No, ma'am.
Okay, we're gonna play Officer Kimball's, which has been admitted as State's Exhibit number 3.
Put your hand up.
Detective Richardson, will you step down for me, please? At this point, we have seen Officer Kimball and Officer Hess arrive at the scene, correct?
Correct.
They were driving together?
They were.
Can you show on this diagram from what angle Officer Kimball is at this time?
This time, Kimball's somewhere up in, I'm not sure, looks like right about here on the diagram, these cars that are parked on the side port.
And we've already discussed that this diagram doesn't show exactly how many cars were out there. The carport was full, wasn't it?
It was very full, yes.
And at this point, we can hear the officers giving commands.
You do hear the officers giving commands, yes.
Why do they do that?
Initially,
An objective speculation, Your Honor.
So based on your own observations from the body cam, I'll let you answer. Go ahead.
Are officers trained to do that?
yes, they are.
Why?
Identification, authority, they're trying to also let people know who's approaching with lights, because it is dark out and stuff, that it's not a burglar or a robber and stuff.
The window! Nope. I can't even tell what to talk about still. We're just gonna move up on it. Yes, no?
Detective Richardson, we heard Officer Hess there say, I'm going to pull the squad car up when Officer Hopkins discusses approaching the vehicle. Is that something that officers are trained to do?
I don't know if you would say trained specifically do that.
Are they trained to try to have cover as they approach a stolen vehicle?
That is a common practice in training, yes.
What is a felony stop?
Felony stop is where you use vehicle typically for cover on, obviously, a felony arrest in a vehicle, get the passengers and drivers, anybody that's in the vehicle, to come out of the vehicle and come back to you rather than making an approach because of the dangerous situation.
Fair to say there is a reasonable suspicion that there is a felony taking place. This is a situation that is dangerous to officers. Therefore, they're expected to go in taking measures to make it more safe for them.
Objective leading, Your Honor.
Sustain.
Do you agree with that? Is that a description of felony stop?
Same objection, Your Honor.
All right. The objection is sustained. Re-ask the question.
What is a felony stop? Why is it a dangerous situation?
The information was that there were a male and female in the car from the 911 call. A computer check of the car by the officers en route found that the vehicle was listed as stolen approximately 2 weeks before, and that it's dark outside, but it's a felony situation as a stolen vehicle, which is a felony.
Is that a possible dangerous situation for officers?
Yes.
And when you said that they're expected to try to get the occupants away from the car, why?
Because there could be weapons in the car, and the car can be used as a weapon itself.
I'm gonna get not occupied. Well, last time it was a male and female, so.
So there's a discussion there if the vehicle's
I
even
didn't hear the question. question.
What is of note at this point?
There's discussion there between officers whether or not the vehicle's even occupied because he can go get the car. And the one officer notes that on the call sheet, the 911 caller said that it was occupied.
So the last information they were given, it was occupied, and then you hear an officer say that the windows are foggy, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, Detective Richardson, at this point, we've seen how the officers approach. Why do they go behind the car?
Judge, I'm going to object to speculation, and I'm also going to object to the witness continuing to basically narrate this video. The jurors can see the video for themselves, and he also has like personal knowledge he was not there at the time.
All right, if you're going to talk about the procedures that may or may not have been followed or training that may have directed their actions, I'll let you do that. The objection's overruled.
You can answer.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes. As they approach, they seem to go behind the squad car. Why would they do so?
They're using the squad car for cover.
And then we've heard the siren. Officer Hess then blasts the siren and beats the horn. Is that something that they are trained to do or to identify themselves?
It's mostly to get people's attention in case they're sleeping, not paying attention, focused on something else.
And is it important that you're trying to let them know that this is the police?
Yes, you want to get their attention so that they recognize your identity, who you are.
Why?
So that this is basically your authority, that they follow your commands, there's no surprises. This is an officer talking to you and I need you to comply.
I can't help it. Hold on. Peter, do you see it, please?
If you'll pause just a moment, I'm trying to get it so that the sound doesn't go in and out. Detective Richardson, we'll see if we can get this. I think because it blares louder, it will sometimes cut
Yes,
out.
last comment was a male. I can't help it. Hold on. Peter, do you see it, please? You see your hand?
At this point, did you hear what the officer said?
I'm not sure which officer you're talking about.
Are they discussing any information they have regarding the occupants of that car?
Sounds like they're still trying to determine whether or not there are occupants in the car.
You'll listen here if you hear information.
Let me see your hands! Hands up! Let me see your hands!
Do you hear someone say, it's occupied, and then another officer yell, let me see your hands?
I can't make out, because I'm getting older and losing my hearing, And so I can't make out, I know there's talking about can't make out leave it, but then I do hear very loudly, when you see your hands on your hands.
Do you remember when you made notes on this, that you made note that they realized the car was occupied?
Yes, at some point they determined it was occupied.
Judge, I'm going to continue to object to this line of questioning. Again, lack of personal knowledge, he was not there, and the continued narration of this video. And
Any reply?
Your Honor, this is the lead detective of the case. This is the person that's in charge of gathering all of the information and compiling it. What his observations were and why he compiled it is relevant for this jury to hear.
The objection's overruled. Go ahead.
There's a bunch of shit back there. Okay.
You have pause at this point. To the best of your knowledge, where is Officer Kimball?
He is, it's his camera, so he's here on the left side of the driver's side, left side. If the vehicle, it would be, if the vehicle's still here, then he's over here on this lattice fence.
Your hands up! Open the door! Yes, police! What do you think? Now, police! Show your hands! He's moving in there now. Show your hands! Put your hands outside the vehicle right now!
Who is this that is in the right corner?
I'm not sure what you mean by the right corner on the screen
Yes, sir.
back there. It looks like the officer has.
Officer Hess, that's him you see walking. If you'll rewind it 10 seconds and hit play again.
Now. Show your hands! Put your hands outside the vehicle right now!
Yes, he just walked in the screen on the right side, as officer has.
From behind where Officer Kimball was,
Yes.
where would that be on this diagram?
So he's coming from, Kimball's still over here. There's actually a tree right here on the fence that Kimball's next to, and he's walking up from behind him this direction.
So if he is behind them, he would see Officer Kimball and Hopkins in front of him,
Yes,
and he walks over to his right.
to his right, yes.
Somebody moving around the back. Hands up! Let me see it!
That's 143, check out making disturbance, 24 non-party, and black male refused to stay away from property. When it's like bring on and big pay. Heavy around like security, their uniform and on.
So we see from Officer Kimball's viewpoint on this,
Yes.
what was significant to you?
He has moved back behind Officer Hess, his partner.
Please show on the diagram where he would have moved from.
He would have been moving from over here by the fence.
And where did he move to?
He moved laterally across this way, back over towards the squad car.
And where was Officer Hess?
Officer Hess had been pulled the car up, the squad car up a little further, and they were standing in the door of the squad here.
So if my finger is where Officer Hess is, please show us again where Officer Kimball moved.
Kimball moved back over in this general area
Okay, put your finger where he started.
here,
Where did he move?
laterally across this way.
So he would have moved behind where Officer Hess was, correct?
That is correct.
object to leave, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Is it also significant to note that you can see Officer Hess and where he is looking.
Objection leading, Your Honor.
Sustained. Let me see Ms. Mattson and Mr. Lewis, please. Members of the jury, if you will go with the sheriff, please take your seat. All eyes for the jury. Y'all may be seated. Ms. Mattson, is it your intention to ask this witness to qualify him as an expert and ask him about an ultimate issue in front of the jury?
Your Honor, we would qualify him as an expert, and we moved to qualify him as an expert, and if the court, based on the court's previous ruling, I still believe that if the expert should not testify to the ultimate issue. But if the court is going to rule, as they already have on record, that the state will be allowed to do so, then yes, I do at this time offer that he is able and qualified to render that opinion.
Okay. Mr. Lewis, you requested a hearing because we're going to get into an ostensibly expert opinion. So my first question is do you have any disagreement? Ms. Mattson, let me ask for clarification purposes. What is the ultimate opinion that you're going to ask this witness once qualified?
Do you have an opinion as to whether or not Christopher Hess had a reasonable belief that officers were in immediate danger of death or serious bodily injury?
Okay. Now, Mr. Lewis, my question to you is, first of all, I don't know what his answer is going to be. That's going to be up to Ms. Madsen on direct examination. But do you have any doubts about his qualifications, his training, or his experience regarding offering that opinion? Not saying that you agree with it or not, but just as a matter of evidentiary consideration, do you think he's qualified or not?
At this time, I would like to take him on board hire to test those qualifications, Your Honor.
Okay, very good. Then I tell you what we'll do. Ms. Madsen, go ahead and have a seat, Mr. Lewis. Ms. Madsen, I think the first thing you need to do is establish his qualifications. Second thing is upon what he relied on making that, although I think that part will be pretty short, and then what the opinion is, and we'll go from there.
Detective Richardson, please go through your training and experience in the areas of investigating homicides and more specifically officer-involved shootings.
And we have heard a little bit about that, so just in particular with officer-involved shootings. Go ahead. We got a nice summary of your career.
I mean, I worked for 4 years in special investigation unit and stuff. Attended basic homicide course as part of homicide, and SIU is closely attached to homicide. When I went over, everybody that had been in SIU had been brought over from homicide, and that same lieutenant was over both units, so it is very closely related.
How many of these cases have you handled?
As the lead detective, probably. Do you want me to include security officers also, which we treated as the same?
Anytime that you have made a determination that an act was reasonable or not.
Between 25 and 30.
Very good. All right. Go ahead.
As the lead detective, how many of you also been a detective additionally on?
Probably another 40 to 50.
Have you been to trainings?
Limited training in the sense of officer-involved shootings.
About force science
No, I was denied going to force science.
by your department?
Yes.
And have you ever recommended that or held an opinion that the officers' acts were unreasonable?
I'm sorry, repeat that question.
Have you ever made a determination that the officers' acts were unreasonable?
Not in any of the cases that I worked, no.
In any of the cases that you've assisted on?
Not that I recall, no.
At this time, defense would offer Defense Exhibit 38, the state's notice of experts, where the first expert they designate is this detective, Dale Richardson, and offer it for record purposes.
Defendant's 38 is admitted for record purposes, unless you have any objection.
No objection.
All right. Okay. And I'm assuming as the lead detective, he's reviewed the entire case file. Is that probably fair?
Detective, have you reviewed the case file?
At various times, number of times, yes. When I do want to qualify that when I picked this case file up this last time before this weekend, the body cams were missing out. So it's been a while since I've actually reviewed the body cams, but I have seen them in the past.
All right. I'm sorry, Ms. Madsen, go ahead. Your ultimate opinion is going to be, you might want to ask him what that's going to be.
Was Officer Hess's use of deadly force reasonable, given all of the facts and circumstances as he knew them at the time he utilized deadly force?
Yes, it was.
What do you base that opinion on?
Factors that include the number of times they had identified themselves and used light, given verbal instructions, and the fact that Ms. Dawes did not comply with those, went through so far as to actually start the engine up, place it in reverse, and with all those officers in that close proximity for approximately 5 minutes, backed up, struck the squad car, accelerated and raced the engine trying to get through the fence. So it was obvious to me that she's trying to get away, trying to escape. Then placed it again in reversed and backed up to an area where officers had previously been standing. As far as Officer Hess was concerned, unbeknownst to him, they had moved as the car was backing up, believing that they were still there, and in their defense, he fired shots into the car to stop the threat.
Ask the witness.
All right, Mr. Lewis? For purposes of this hearing, cross-examination, go ahead.
Good morning, thank you, Richardson. How are you?
Just fine, sir.
Good. You are familiar with the penal code, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what's the definition of reasonable belief?
The actual definition of reasonable belief,
What does it mean to you?
to me, it means that what a standard that a general person would come to be a reasonable person basically would find as within the norms.
Okay, so again, what is the legal definition of reasonable belief?
I can't give you the legal definition.
Okay, you are familiar with Chapter 9 of the Penal Code?
Yes, sir.
Okay, as pertains to justifications.
Yes, sir.
And what is the legal definition for self-defense? What are the elements of that?
Almost that. You can use force to defend yourself or a third party under 931, 932, 933. As long as, and there are some qualifiers, that you did not instigate the incident, that you did not consent to the level of force that was being used, as long as it's not deadly force. There are some other qualifiers, but I don't recall them right offhand.
Okay. And as pertains to your opinion that the defendant acted reasonably, you stated all the things that you relied on to make that opinion. But at the end of the day, you don't really know what was in the defendant's mind at the time that he used deadly force, do you?
In the defendant's mind, no.
Okay. You don't know what he saw at that time, correct?
Only based on the statement that he provided to me. Other than that, no.
And obviously you weren't there that night, so you can't testify to the position of all the officers at the time.
I was not there at the time, no.
And in fact, we know, and you know at this point after watching the body cam videos, there was actually no officers behind that vehicle at the time, correct?
That is accurate.
At this time, this witness can't state the definition of reasonable belief, which is the standard in this case, and he also can't state the law as it pertains to the use of deadly force in self-defense and defense of the third person, so we would object and testify in making that opinion if the defendant acted reasonably at the time.
Go ahead.
Here, I would submit to the court that it is ridiculous that the state is allowed to call detectives and qualify them experts constantly, and that the state in this case designated this man as an expert and found him qualified to be an expert right up until the point that his opinion hurt their case. And at that moment, they made a decision to not call him and to decide that he was no longer qualified when they had already deemed him to be so. To use him when he helps you and then say nobody can use him if he hurts me is completely disingenuous and goes against the spirit of our law in Brady.
Hold on. Regarding the admissibility under 702, 703, 704, 705, I don't want to know about the state and other cases. I'm talking about this case in here. Do you have any replies to Mr. Lewis's argument?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
They are asking that their expert witness, who was not at the scene and did not conduct any interviews and has a very limited capability of what he actually reviewed, only remembers that he reviewed one statement, doesn't know how many others he did. They feel he is qualified to discuss where the officers were positioned, what they were thinking, and whether or not it was reasonable. Based upon that, the man who was not there and did not personally conduct the investigation is qualified, but the man that did conduct it is not qualified if his opinion hurts them. Detective Dale Richardson is qualified to be an expert in this case, and right up into the weeks this case was pending, the state thought he was too.
I would just state for the record, Judge, that the state did not actually call him as an expert witness in this case.
Okay. None of that has anything to do with 702, 705. I feel like that this witness is qualified based on his experience to offer an opinion, and I feel like because he's an expert witness that he can offer that opinion to the jurors for the same reason that I allowed the other witnesses to offer that opinion too. So I'm going to let it in. Is there anything else we need to discuss on the record? I'll give you a running objection, Mr. Lewis, to any testimony by Detective Richardson. We're going to stay away from, and I can't make this any clearer, we're going to stay away from what the DA's office might have done in other cases. None of that's relevant. This jury is going to decide the facts in the case that is before them and nothing else. And I want both sides to be absolutely clear about that. So with that in mind, call the jurors, Sheriff. You want me to call them? I'll call them. Yeah, go ahead, Sheriff.
All rise.
Thank you. Sheriff, you all may be seated. Members of the jury. Yes, ma'am?
Cell phone and I didn't realize it, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I tell you what, just turn it off. We good?
Yes.
I want y'all to know that at times throughout the trial, I will ask you, remove you from the courtroom, and that's so that I can make certain rulings. You're not to speculate as to what those rulings are. You're not to try to get inside the court's head and figure out what's happening in here. None of that has anything to do with you. Those are legal questions that I have to answer to the best of my ability. I want you to know, too, that we do that in the hopes of making this process in court as efficient as possible. So please indulge the court and don't ever hold the delay or shuffling in and out against any one of the lawyers, okay? Hold it against me. It's my courtroom. It's my schedule, all right? You'll recall that Ms. Madsen was on direct examination with this witness, and I will remind you, sir, as I do with all witnesses when we take a break in the middle of their testimony, you're still under the oath that I gave to you previously. Ms. Madsen, you may proceed whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Richardson, I will skip to the ultimate question. Did you form an opinion of whether or not Officer Hess's use of deadly force?
Judge, before you answer that question, may I ask a few questions on what I?
About that opinion?
Yes.
No, sir. You've already had that opportunity. Go ahead.
Once again, Detective Richardson, I'm going to ask you the ultimate question. Did you form an opinion as to whether or not Officer Hess's use of deadly force was reasonable given all of the facts and circumstances as he knew them to be at the time he utilized deadly force?
Yes, I did form an opinion.
What was your opinion?
I believe his use of force was reasonable based on everything factored in that evening.
What did you base that opinion on?
I based that on the fact that the officers were there for several minutes before the actual shooting occurred, had identified themselves multiple times, used lights, given instructions to show their hands, and yet Ms. Dawes proceeded to start the engine up, back up, strike the squad car, then accelerate forward, racing the engine, trying to break through the fence. So it appears she is trying to escape at a very high cost. And then backing up again into an area where at one point 2 officers had been standing, to the last of Officer Hess's recollection. Not unbeknownst to him, they had moved, but he did not know that, and he fired in defense of their lives, fearing that they were in jeopardy.
And we were about to play what the state put in as State's Exhibit number 3 as Officer Kimball's body cam, correct? We were in the middle of it.
We were in the middle of it.
And we had just seen a moment when Officer Hess was behind Officer Kimball and Officer Hopkins.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna watch here, and if you will tell me the moment that you see Officer Hess. Once again, we will step down and show the jury where they are.
Officer Kimball is over this area by a tree along the lattice fence. Officer Hopkins, I believe, is also in that general area. And then Officer Hess on the video where he steps out is seen to the right on the body camera, was obviously somewhere behind them and then moving laterally towards the squad car.
And You can observe, is it fair to say you can observe Officer Hess from that moment on?
Yeah, I believe he disappears very, very briefly, and then from that moment on, you can see him at the front, yes.
If you'll take a seat.
Now, boys! Show your hands! He's moving in there now. Show your hands! Put your hands outside the vehicle right now! Somebody's moving around the back. Hands up! Let me see your hands!
That's 143, check on major disturbance, 24 non parties, and black male refused to stay away from property. Minus 1 bring on and a big tag.
Watch out, watch out, watch out.
And the around like security, their uniform and armed.
Detective Richardson, in discussing this with me, is there anything of import about Officer Hess's head as from the moment he leaves where Officer Kimball and Hopkins are by that tree directly behind the car?
Can object to speculation on lack of personal knowledge, Your Honor.
Can you establish what it is that he has the personal knowledge for to answer your question before you ask him?
Did you make observations about Officer Hess's head in order to render your expert opinion?
I did, yes.
What were they?
When he gets into the squad car, the engine starts on the stolen vehicle. He gets in the squad car to pull it forward. That's in the time in which the other officers that were behind began moving laterally, but behind Officer Hess. At that point forward, when the car backs up, the stolen car backs up and strikes the squad car, he steps out, he looks down briefly, then he looks, and his focus remains on that car. It is now moving, it has become a danger, a threat, it has struck the vehicle. He never looks to his left again. He would not have been able to know that those two officers had moved from behind the stolen vehicle.
Who is Virgilio Rosales?
He was the common law husband of Miss Dawes and was a front passenger in that stolen vehicle.
And do you know his current location?
He is in the North Tower of the Lou Sterrett Justice Center awaiting transfer to TDC.
Would he be readily available should somebody want to call him as a witness?
He would.
Either party could call him as a witness.
That is correct.
Detective Richardson, when did you arrive to court for trial?
Tuesday morning at about 7 o'clock.
And did both parties subpoena you to be here?
I was subpoenaed by both parties, yes.
And you have been here since Tuesday?
Object to relevance, Your Honor, at this point.
Sustain.
At what point were you notified that you would not be testifying for the state?
Objection to relevance.
Sustained.
Ask the witness.
Detective Richardson, as it pertains to Mr. Rosales, the passenger inside the vehicle, did you interview him at any point during the course of your investigation?
Detective O'Brien
Interviewed him?
for me, yes.
Okay, and as the lead detective, you would have reviewed everything that your other detectives did for you during the case, correct?
That's correct.
Based upon the statement, without going into it, but based upon the statement that Mr. Rosales gave you, was it consistent with the other information that you gathered during the course of your investigation?
It was not consistent, no.
Okay. Now, all of the officers, there were 6 at the scene that night, correct, or that morning?
Yes, at the time of the incident, yes.
And were they all wearing body-worn cameras?
5 of the 6 were.
Okay. Okay, which of the officers was not wearing body worn clothes?
Officer Alish, I believe is how you say his last name,
Okay. And is there a particular reason why he didn't have one on that night?
wasn't issued a body camera.
Okay, are you aware of how DPD issues body cameras?
No, sir. I know there's not an equal number of cameras to officers, so not all officers, but I don't know how they determine who gets a body camera or not.
Now, you've given your opinion to the jury that you felt as though the defendant was reasonable at the time that he used deadly force against his victim.
Yes, sir.
And you are aware of the standard that's necessary for somebody to use deadly force in the state of Texas, correct?
I am aware of Chapter 9, yes.
Okay, so let's go to reasonable belief just in general. Can you give the jury the legal definition of that?
I can't give you a legal definition. I keep it on my desk so that I can refer to it when I need to.
Okay. How about self-defense? Can you tell me the elements of self-defense here in the state of Texas, specifically as it pertains to the use of deadly force?
Sitting here on the stand without the book, I cannot specifically tell you all the elements.
Okay. And so you testified that your opinion is based upon, I guess, several factors, but I guess one of the main things you said was based upon what the defendant said in his statement. Is that correct?
That is a factor, yes.
Now, obviously, you weren't there at the time that he decided to use deadly force. Is that right?
That is correct.
And you can't tell this jury what was in his head at the time that he decided to do that. Is that correct?
I cannot tell you what was in the defendant's head at the time, no.
You've conducted other criminal investigations before, right outside of the realm of Austin Bob shootings. Is that right?
Yes, I have.
You've interviewed suspects in crimes before. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Do you always take what they say at face value?
Not always, no.
Why not?
Sometimes I have evidence to the contrary. Sometimes suspects, tell me a story that's in their benefit to try and protect themselves.
Right. I mean, if they're accused of a crime, they will have a motive to lie. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
During the course of your investigation, I guess you attempted to get some information from the vehicle that the victim was in that night, correct? Specifically the CDR, the crash data recorder,
Yes, sir.
commonly known as the black box. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And typically that would give you some kind of speed or velocity information.
Depending on the circumstances, it can, yes.
Okay, were you able to gain that information in this case?
There was no information on that CDR.
Do you know why not?
My understanding is, and this is coming from the traffic detective that pulled the information, that typically does not record information unless there is a deployment of the airbags.
Another factor in your opinion based on your testimony is the manner in which the victim struck the squad car. Is that correct?
Just the fact that she struck the squad car.
Okay. We're going to take a quick look at Officer Hopkins' body worn, which is State's Exhibit number 4. And this is the moment in time right before the vehicles collide, okay?
Okay.
I'll show it to you and then we're going to talk about it.
Intervention of both renal collection, like me or refuse to stay away from traffic.
Okay. I'll back it up just a little bit. Would you agree with me that the reverse lights on the vehicle come on prior to the defendant pulling the squad car up?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's 143, check out making intervention of both renal.
Would you agree with me that the vehicles are moving simultaneously at this point?
Could you replay it, please?
Yes.
That's 143, check out making intervention of both renal. Like me or refuse.
Here the vehicles are moving at the same time. She's moving in reverse and he's coming forward.
I have a hard time detecting the vehicle, her vehicle's actually moving until after his is, very briefly, his comes to stop and then she backs up and strikes him.
Okay. You were asked a question on direct examination with regard to are officers trained to pull the car up, and at that time your answer was they're not necessarily trained that way. You remember that?
Yes,
Is it true that blocking in vehicles is a violation of DPD policy?
it is a violation of DPD policy, yes.
Why is that?
You would have to ask those that made the policy, sir. I don't know.
Couldn't it be a dangerous situation? We're talking about danger. Couldn't that be a danger to either the officer or the person who that officer's trying to block?
I guess depending on the circumstances, yes.
Now, you're aware that there was a firearm found in the vehicle, in the victim's vehicle after the fact, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You've given an opinion as to the reasonableness of the defendant. Based upon your investigation, did the gun being inside the vehicle, did that have anything to do with the defendant using deadly force in this case?
The gun being in the vehicle had no effect on the decision-making for using deadly force in this case.
You testified that you have investigated, I believe, 25 to 30 cases as lead investigator on officer-involved shootings. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I believe that you also testified that of those cases, you have never found that an officer acted unreasonably. Is that correct?
I have not had a case where, no, that's correct.
Are you aware that when the defendant fired on the victim's vehicle that he actually shot the squad car? Did you know that?
Yes. Well, I suspect it was him. We don't have actual proof, but yes.
Let me ask you this, Detective. Are you familiar with DPD general orders as it pertains to shooting and moving vehicles?
Yes, sir.
And what's your understanding of those general orders?
In general, they do not want officers shooting and moving vehicles. You cannot intentionally place yourself in a position in front of a moving vehicle that would lead to you to shoot at the vehicle.
As a matter of fact, is it prohibited unless there's a situation where somebody's in imminent danger of either serious bodily injury or death?
That is correct.
And aren't officers trained to, in lieu of shooting, to actually move out of the path of the vehicle?
I won't say trained. I've never actually had a training day to move out of the way of a vehicle, but that is our understanding, is that you should try and make every attempt to move out of the way of a moving vehicle, yes.
As a matter of fact, that's what the officers did in this case. The officers that were behind the vehicle, they moved out of the path of the vehicle. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir, they did.
Okay. Thanks, sir. I'll pass it with you, John.
Detective Richardson, the state asked you about the gun in the car. Is the gun and the fact that it is loaded one of the things to consider when trying to determine what the driver's intent would have been?
Objection, speculation. No idea what the victim had there yet.
Sustained.
Is the fact that the gun was in the car, was it illegal?
It would have been illegal, yes.
Is the fact that the car is stolen, is that illegal for the driver of that car to be operating a motor vehicle?
It is illegal to operate a stolen motor vehicle.
And when the driver tried to ram through the fence and evade arrest or detention with a motor vehicle, would that be a felony?
Objection, speculation.
Overruled. You can answer that if you know the answer.
Trying to evade in a motor vehicle is a felony in the state of Texas.
And possession of that firearm, whether it be stolen or not, is illegal for both that driver and passenger, correct?
That is correct.
That may have been some of the motivation of that driver.
Speculation, objection.
All right, the objection is sustained.
Is it something that you consider to render your expert opinion as to what was going on at that scene?
It is something that I would consider.
The state asked you that whether or not you take everyone at their word when they give a statement.
Correct.
You don't assume that they're telling the truth, do you?
I don't.
You didn't assume that Officer Hess was telling the truth, did you?
Objection leading, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Not necessarily, no.
Is that why you went back and watched Officer Kimball's body cam to watch Officer Hess's head?
Yes.
To see if he was being consistent before, during, and after?
I look for consistencies between what I have in physical evidence, whether it's actual physical evidence, fire cartridge casings, guns, video evidence, along with what is written as a statement, and try and see if they agree. Yes.
And Officer Hess's body cam, did you look at his body camera video?
I did look at all the body camera with the officers out there.
And did you make notes about his behavior before, during, and after?
I did make notes regarding his body camera.
Was there anything significant on his body camera that you made note of?
I made note of shortly after the shooting, he asked, one, is everybody all right? So he was concerned about other people.
An objective here, say, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Did you make notes afterwards that were handwritten notes of what was significant to you when you verified the statement?
I did, yes.
And did you find things that he said on that body camera that was consistent with his belief that officers were still back there?
I did.
And that body camera is in evidence should the jury want to watch it?
The body camera is, yes.
And it shows him making those statements.
He does make those statements on the video.
You didn't assume that everything he said was true. You checked that it matched the evidence at the scene.
I did check, as I always do.
And was it reasonable that he would think officers were still back there?
As I explained, I do think it was reasonable to believe that.
What was the biggest threat to those officers out there that night?
The moving vehicle,
Does it make sense that the officer's attention would be exclusively on that moving vehicle?
you always want to keep your eye on the threat and not look away. So yes, that would be reasonable.
Action is always going to be faster than reaction. What does that statement mean to you?
In reaction,
I'm
there's,
going to object, first of all, to leading. It says he testified on direct that he's not familiar. He was not trained in force science, which is what that is pertaining to. So I'm going to object to his lack of personal knowledge.
Any reply?
Your Honor, I didn't ask him what it means in force science. Multiple officers have stated action versus reaction. It is a common knowledge held among these officers. I'm not putting words in his mouth. I'm asking if he is familiar with it and what it means.
All right, the objection is overruled. You can answer if you know.
yes, I do understand that because I was taught in the academy about what's called lag time and stuff. Basically, it takes a while for your brain to recognize what's happening, to come up with a plan as to how to react to it, and then actually send out the impulses telling you what to do, to make your hand come up, to draw your gun, to turn and run, whatever it may be. So reaction always takes longer than the actual action.
And can a car be a deadly weapon?
A car can be a deadly weapon, yes.
Capable of causing death or serious bodily injury?
Yes,
Does it depend on the manner of its use?
it does depend on the manner of its use.
Do we look at the totality of the circumstances to determine whether or not it is being used as a deadly weapon?
Yes,
All of the circumstances available.
all the circumstances, yes.
Was this car being used as a deadly weapon?
In my opinion, yes.
Based upon what?
Based upon the fact of the close proximity and at the very least, Ms. Dawes was reckless in backing that vehicle up, knowing that there were officers there and stuff. The weight of the vehicle and the ability for that vehicle to accelerate very quickly, being gas powered.
I know it's been asked, but if she wanted to floor it and ram the officers down, she certainly could have, correct?
She could have, yes.
But then she also could have crashed out and not been able to drive away, right?
That's a possibility, yes.
So it's possible that there's a balancing act of, I'll plow through the officers, but I need to keep this car operable to get out.
Objection leading and speculation.
Sustained.
is there a somewhat of a cost balance analysis that would have to use the car as a weapon but still keep it operable?
If you're trying to escape in the vehicle, yes.
Objection sustained.
If you're trying to escape in that vehicle, is it important that the vehicle still be operable?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Detective Richardson, just a few more questions. With regard to the defendant's statement, did you actually do a verbal statement with him? Did you ask him some questions as pertains to his conduct that night?
I did not ask him questions. Kind of went over briefly what I wanted to make sure that he covered in as much detail as possible with he and his attorney.
Did you challenge any of the statements that he made with regard to what happened that night as you would any other suspect in the crime?
No, I did not challenge any.
Okay. You also testified that with respect to him not moving his head, based upon your view of the video, that you guys are trained to keep your eye on the threat. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Even when it comes to using deadly force?
Especially if you're using deadly force and going to fire, you would want to maintain your eye on the threat for accuracy, yes.
You're also trained to consider your target as well as the background, is that correct?
That is one of the things to consider, yes.
Right, so if you're so focused on the target that you're not focused on anything else in the area, wouldn't that be a danger? In other words, if you're shooting at an object and you're not aware of what's around the object, would that be dangerous? Would that be reckless?
It could be reckless if you were so focused as to exclude everything else.
Which sounds like is what you're saying that he did, right? If he's so focused on looking at the car, he's not even looking behind the car, in front of the car to see if there's even a threat there, right?
Looking at the car, knowing what's on the other side of the car would be the important focus. Looking behind you or way off to the left where the car is not, I don't believe that would be something you would normally do in a deadly force situation.
Okay, not way off, but if we're talking about shooting at a vehicle, you want to at least look behind and in front of the vehicle. I mean, what if he's saying that there are officers over there? Would he be shooting in the direction of the officers if he's firing in that direction?
Not depending on your angle of fire, not necessarily, no, sir.
Okay, but it's possible, right?
I guess anything's possible.
Sure. If he's saying that there are officers behind the car, right?
Yes, sir.
And he shoots at the car, he'd be shooting in the direction of officers, correct? Especially considering the fact that he shot the squad car in front of him.
And the fact that the officers would be forward of him if they were still behind and he is shooting at the car which is forward, they are in the direction, but they are not in the line of fire.
You testified that the victim was reckless in the manner that she reversed the vehicle because she knew that there were officers back there, is that right?
I believe she did, yes.
Okay. Obviously, you weren't there, right?
I was not there.
Did you know the young lady who was killed that night?
I did not know Ms. Dawes, no.
And obviously, you didn't get an opportunity to speak with her because she was killed by the defendant, right?
That is correct.
So you can't tell this jury what was in her mind at that time, can you?
I cannot tell you what was actually in her mind, no.
Right, so you can't tell this jury whether or not she knew there were officers behind her or not, can you?
I cannot tell you if she actually in her head knew that there were officers behind her, no.
What consideration is given when we're talking about using deadly force, especially about a police officer, again, talking about targeted background, as to any innocent bystanders who may be struck by gunfire? Is there any consideration given to that as far as, okay, yeah, I've got a threat, but do I not shoot because maybe there's a child in the car, or maybe there's an officer over there? Any consideration given to that?
Yes, considerations, you obviously don't want to shoot an innocent bystander.
If you could step down for one moment, Detective, and point out on the diagram, Defense Exhibit number 11, where you believe the defendant last saw Officers Kemple and Hopkins.
Over this area, near the last fence.
Okay, thank you. Right, see, and you are aware there's actually two different bodies of shots by the defendant?
Yes, there's a series of 9 shots and then 3 more shots.
And so the second volley of shots especially, I mean, really the first one could qualify too, but the second volley of shots, if that's the last place where he saw those officers, and that vehicle is backed up to that point, again, if those officers are still there, they would be in the line of fire at that point. Would you not agree with that?
They would be closer to the line of fire, yes.
And just for the record, you're no longer with the Special Investigations Unit, is that correct?
I am not.
And when did you transfer out of there?
October of 2018.
2018. Oh, thanks, sir. I'll pass it to you, sir.
Just briefly on.
Go ahead.
State's Exhibit 16. When the state was asking you about the angles of shots, take a look to your left there. You see the glass right here and right here?
I do.
Would that be consistent with the first volley of shots?
I'm not sure of your question.
Well, with the first volley of shots, windows shattered and fell out, and then the car moves again. Would this glass on the road in front of the car, a certain number of feet, be consistent with that first volley of shots?
It would be consistent as to where the vehicle was when the first shots were fired, yes.
And when you testified to this jury with the diagram, you talked about Officer Pemble and Hopkins being behind a tree, correct?
Yes,
Can we see that tree right here?
I believe that is the tree, yes.
So it appears that Officer Hess would have shot right before that car was passing where he last saw officers.
Yes.
Ask the witness.
Just briefly, Detective Richardson, prior to giving his statement, was the defendant given the opportunity to watch the video evidence in this case?
Before writing his statement?
Before giving a statement, was he able to view the video evidence in this case?
Yes, he was.
Do you know which videos he watched prior to giving his statement?
I do not, because he does it with his attorney, so I'm excluded from that.
Okay, so in fact, not only the defendant, but all the officers were allowed to watch the video evidence prior to giving statements. Is that correct?
As required, yes.
Okay, when you say as required, what do you mean?
I mean that under the occupational code, it says officers can view any video available. As a matter of fact, the DA's office asked for a ruling from the Attorney General as to whether that includes officers being able to see other officers' video. And the Attorney General said, yes, absolutely, any means any. So they are afforded to view any video that we have available, yes.
Are you aware that that particular law that you're referring to in the government code refers to internal investigations and not criminal investigations? Were you aware of that?
That is not my understanding, so no.
Would you agree with me that, first of all, any other suspect besides a police officer would not be given that opportunity? Would you agree with me on that?
In most cases, they would not be afforded that opportunity.
Would you also agree with me that by watching the video prior to giving a statement, the basis of that statement would probably be based on what they see in the video and not necessarily based on what they remember what actually took place?
Not necessarily.
From their own personal knowledge.
Not necessarily. The video is just simply to refresh their memory.
But it's possible that an officer could watch a video and give a statement based on what he saw in the video, right?
Anything's possible, yes.
That's what you're
All right, very good. Members of the jury, if you would please go with the sheriff and await further instructions. All rise for the jurors. You all may be seated. Detective, have a seat. when you said before that Rosales was awaiting transfer to TDC, did any of these lawyers talk to you about the fact that you're not supposed to mention his criminal history?
No, sir, but I should have known better.
Thank you. You can stand down.
I apologize,
That's all I
Your
have.
Honor.
Let me just be as clear as I can with you all. I made a ruling. You guys may not agree with it. You may not have liked it, and that doesn't really matter to me. I'm going to ask you from this point forward to instruct all your witnesses in no way, shape, or form, if those witnesses may have knowledge about a criminal history, that they are not to refer to or allude to that fact. If that happens again, there will be consequences. Court's in a 10-minute recess. That's all.